Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel. My name is Scott. We are here to give instant reactions to Survivor Series WarGames 2024. It was a big show, as expected. We're going to break down the full card and all the results and highlights that have come out of it right after this.
Welcome to the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel. On this channel, we bring you some great content from inside and outside of the squared circle. We will go through and offer some in-depth analysis of the biggest events of the year, as well as bringing you exclusive interviews with some of the industry's biggest names. There will also be live show reviews, in-depth features, and podcasts. So make sure you give that subscribe button a slam so you don't miss any of the action.
All right, once again, you are tuned into the instant reaction for WWE Survivor Series WarGames 2024 from Vancouver, live via me in the UK. And again, we are talking all the big results and kind of highlights that have come out of the big show tonight. I got to say, it was an enjoyable show. I really did enjoy it. Now, it was never going to live up to last year's ending, was it? And the ending, I think, is something that a lot of people are going to be wanting to talk about here. Quickly get to some comments already. Sludgeport says the show was so boring. No, Sludge, no. I thought it was a good show. I have to say, I really enjoyed this show. Why did you think it was boring? I thought it was a lot of good stuff on this show. Again, I think last year's one is going to leave a bit of a kind of bit of expectation for a lot of people, but generally speaking, I think it was a good show. There were a lot of things that I think we thought going into this event could happen as far as surprises and storyline progression that I guess we didn't get. So I kind of understand where you're coming from there, but we did have some great moments, some great matches, some great spots, you name it. It was a really good showing, in my opinion, from the WWE in this one here. Started out, of course, with the women's WarGames match. And yeah, a good one. I mean, there's been talk all weekend, right? We've been talking about on this channel. I've seen others now talking about this as well. You know, about maybe bringing back traditional Survivor Series matches in favor of WarGames in some form, whether it's kind of moving WarGames separately, completely, or just kind of having one WarGames match and one traditional match. And again, we talked earlier about how not having a stable involved with the women's division seems to me, you know, feel like maybe that would have been the match best suited to it. But I have to say, for the match itself, it was still very enjoyable. I really liked it. Again, I've seen some discourse online saying that it was, some people calling it the worst women's WarGames match. I mean, I don't know what the worst one would be because I've enjoyed all of them, if I'm honest. As far as matches go and moments and spots, yeah, there were things within this one that I think could have been a little tighter. But still, I thought a pretty enjoyable match. Slide says, all of these matches were okay and really nothing happened, but did like some spots. Okay, yeah, I guess it depends how you look at it, right? Like you say, I think they were more than okay. I think they were good matches and some good spots. But I guess if you say nothing happens as far as storyline goes going forward, I can see where you're coming from there, except for, of course, Nakamura winning the title, which we'll touch on in a little bit. But I think beyond that, you're probably right in the sense that there were no other title changes. There was no turns. There was no cash in like we expected maybe in a women's WarGames match. But again, let's get into that one first of all. Of course, we had Candice LeRae, Raquel Rodriguez, Tiffany Stratton, Nia Jackson, Liv Morgan taking on Bianca, Belair, Rhea, Ripley, Bayley, Io Sky, and Naomi. Now, started out, of course, with the separate entrances. You had Naomi coming out with a party hat, which was a little confusing at first until I remembered it was her birthday. Bayley had war shaved into the side of her head. Rhea Ripley had a cool mask. Tiffany had no briefcase, which was suspicious. And then as far as getting into the match, we had that toilet seat spot from over Nia's head with Naomi kind of homage to father-in-law, I guess, with Rikishi, a bit of a stink face there. Io got the trash can as soon as she came out, and it was a little different to last year in the sense that it was painted colors that fit sort of her attire, right? And you thought something different's got to happen. She can't do the same thing. She's not going to just put it in her head and dive off, right? So I give them credit for trying something different. It's almost like how John Morrison and then Kofi and Naomi as well have got those Rumble spots. It was like, oh, this is the EO thing we do now. But they try to change it a little bit. And again, we'll touch on that in a little bit more detail. Let's go kind of how the match panned out in kind of real time. Next, you had her trying to bring in that trash can, stopped by Candice and LeRae. Bianca and Bayley both using Bianca's hair. I thought it was quite funny because she had 2 mega braids coming out of it. And eventually you got Rhea Ripley taking off that mask we mentioned a moment ago to really just kind of sell that she was willing to, I guess, put herself at risk, you know, take away that protection to get to live. And then we got that set up properly for what EO was going to do. Now, she puts on the trash can on top of her. And then you start seeing Tiffany set up on the opposite side. Now, it leads to something interesting, of course, which is the Money in the Bank attempt to cash in. But I thought it was a really poor setup, if I'm honest. As much as a cool visual it was slightly out of time. It's something, you know, it's difficult to do these things. Don't get me wrong. That wasn't the issue for me. The issue for me was that they were looking at each other, right? And again, you kind of have to, right? Let's kind of take ourselves out of the kind of bubble of, you know, believing this is not scripted. As performers, you know, you're going to naturally look over and see, am I getting the right time? That makes sense. What didn't make sense is that it was quite blatant. And why would you do that waiting for your enemy in the opposite team to do it when you're going to take out half of your own team? All right, because she's going to cash in on them, right? But it just seemed weird. Like they were staring at each other, be like, "Are we ready?" And even if they weren't doing that, why would they do the spot at the same time? That should have been 2 members of the same team, or completely different moves and 2 big moments. Now I understand that if you did it as 2 big moments, it might somewhat devalue EO's spot, because EO's spot was supposed to be different enough for people to go, oh, but it weren't the same as last year. But I do think that doing a moonsault in a spray canned, spray painted trash can is different enough. You didn't need to have the double kind of side of things. Although it was a good visual for someone doing a moonsault and a swanton, they were on separate teams. So it kind of bugged me in that sense. But hey, daring move, incredible from both of these athletes to pull that off, even if I touch on the kind of minor issues of them looking at each other and the delay and stuff like that. And I guess kayfabe wise, it's seeming odd. It's still a cool visual, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate the effort that these performers put in to give us a spot like that. Don't get me wrong. Then you do get, coming of, you know, from that, a result of that. And again, you could have done this if it was just the one side of things, if they were separate spots. But after the swanton, at least, there's a hint of a cash-in from Tiffany Stratton. Now, she's looking at both champs, and we talked about this in the kind of kickoff show last night and also in the build-up show earlier on. Once again, thank you so much to the guys that have stuck with us throughout these streams over the weekend. Really do appreciate it. We were getting you hyped up yesterday and earlier today. If you're new here, that's what we do on this channel. We get hyped up for the PLEs as well as hitting you with this instant reaction review. But on that, we were basically talking about how it would be difficult to make, on those 2 streams, difficult to make, you know, the heel team lose because they've got 2 champions within that team, and it makes them look bad, right? We'll get to that in a bit more detail soon. But because of that, you did have the unique scenario where Tiffany's looking at both of them, and we were saying, look, with a WarGames match, it's the perfect time to take advantage. But although people weren't thinking about it as much this time around, people were still thinking about it enough. And when it fails again, it just starts to be like, it's annoying. And we've had this so many times with the Money in the Bank briefcase, kind of flirting with the cash-ins and stuff like that. At some stage, you're just like, it's too much. And I say that, don't get me wrong, because when the real one happens, people lose their mind still. But it does get kind of frustrating because it was a great opportunity. And obviously, she didn't come out with a briefcase. She finds it in the trash can, I think it was. And it was like it was been set up. And how many times is she going to pretend or flirt to cash in on Nia and Nia not do anything about it? You know, does Nia not have I would say the network or Peacock or Netflix is about to be. Does Nia not have like the internet? What's going on? Does she not know what's going on here? So that was a bit odd. It was stopped, of course, by EO with the fire extinguisher. And then you get Rhea Ripley handcuffing Ricardo. I was going to say Ricardo Rodriguez. That would have been a completely different match. Del Rio pops out of nowhere. Raquel Rodriguez. And then you get Nia getting powerbombed through the table. Eventually it ends with the Riptide a 1-2-3 and makes a point of pinning the world champion, right? Liv Morgan is pinned, and they make a point of it on commentary that she's just been the world champion. And it was interesting what Andy was saying earlier on that, she's almost in this John Cena kind of style of booking, right? She's just constantly getting wins, and it can be a bit too much. And I understand that she seemed like a team captain here. She seemed like a big deal, but Liv keeps losing to Rhea. She kind of needs to look strong, right? So I'm not sure this was the right way to go as far as the booking of the winner and who got the pin and who pinned who. But as a match on its own, enjoyable. I have to say, it was enjoyable. I did think it was a fun match for all its faults as far as kind of going into it. It's, maybe not being deserving, if you will, of a WarGames match type because it's supposed to be blood feud, just like Hell in a Cell and all this kind of stuff. It still was an entertaining match, and I can't lie, I did enjoy it. Speaking of something I enjoyed, I did not expect to because I was so all over the place when it came to my predictions here for this match. LA Knight versus Nakamura for the US title. Look, if you missed the streams earlier on or last night, you basically missed me being frustrated with how much I loved Nakamura but didn't want him to win because I love him so much. I want him to be a world champion, but then over the past 24 hours I start to accept what he's not gonna be, is he? And if he is, it ain't anytime soon. And maybe it's not the same as when he won the mid-card titles before, the IC in the US. Maybe this is going to be different, third time lucky, as they say, for the US title at least. And it felt like it mattered. It was an enjoyable match. Strangely though, Nakamura came out with a new mask kind of hat combo. That was cool. But also with a brand new theme song again. Now, we were talking about this earlier on today and on last night's stream. On SmackDown, he did debut a new theme song. It was kind of a slower version with a bit more kind of, instrumental parts in the background. It reminded me of how they've tweaked Finn Balor's song. It's still got the same kind of core to it, but it's a heel version, it feels like, right? Nakamura's one was the same. And now we've got another heel version of that same song, which strips it away even further, but still has those kind of identifiable kind of tones. I saw a lot of people were quite frustrated about this. We actually put out a question on our X page. Thank you to those that follow us already, but if you don't, at RM Pro Wrestling. What was it? Let me see if I can find see some of the comments here. So I said, Shinsuke Nakamura has another new entrance theme. What are your thoughts? And I was basically saying that it's weird because I do like both, but now the one from SmackDown must be gone already. We had Brian at Brian_Wolfbane saying Shinsuke is everything. Hunter MWM124089885. What a name. Said I prefer the SmackDown one. Jordy Peterman says awful. And Mr. Snake Stud says, I don't care who hears the banger from SmackDown. I don't know who hears the banger from SmackDown and says, let's change it to this. Whoever had that idea need to be fired ASAP. I mean, that's a big call. Another one said, Trey Z Takers says, the one he had on Friday was significantly better. I actually think, if I'm honest, like the one on SmackDown was probably a little bit better. This is like an alternative to it, where it's weird that they posted that draft that was kind of a fuller version. That's what it feels like they've done. They've posted a draft and then gone, now we'd have to strip down version even further. I've got to say, I enjoyed them both. And I think the presentation Nakamura has been great. And it added to what we saw on SmackDown. It was more removed from his original character, right? It was even more heel. It was more kind of digging into this dark side. So therefore, I think it helped. And I think it helped the match. What do you guys think? Do you like the new Nakamura theme song? Do you like his new presentation? And what are your thoughts between the theme song we saw on SmackDown and the theme song we've seen here? Even going back to his other heel turn a few years ago. Like it was an adaptation of his main theme song in WWE with the rapping on top, which again was fantastic, and it suited that version of heel Nakamura. I thought this version of the song suited this version of heel Nakamura, different to that heel Nakamura, and then this one, I'm like, oh, I guess this suits it as well. So look, I've been happy with each and every one of them, but it's strange when you get two back to back, literally straight away, and it means we're not going to get the other one, right? So that's a bit of a shame, because that was quite the banger itself. Sludge says Nakamura needs to be in the world title division. I agree, man. I mean, maybe that time will come. Maybe this will be the stepping stone that a mid title should always be, right? And I mean, I say always be. Sometimes you don't make it to that level, but he's certainly good enough to hold a world title, isn't he? So, also says Nakamura will always have good themes. Yeah, I mean, taking it all the way back to New Japan with Subconscious. I mean, what a banger of a theme song that is, on top of all the ones he's had, or the variations of the ones he's had in WWE. But going back to the match itself, again, one I really did enjoy. I was surprised that we had this here with the title change. It kind of gave me a bit of a hint as to what might happen in the next match. But hey, they were playing on LA Knight being not focused. He dropped the title. He slipped on the top rope. It's hard to know what was kind of just picked up by commentary to cover for things and how much was planned. So kudos either side. You had the big spot where you had the kind of flip from the top rope, where the kind of, I think Nakamura kind of flipped LA Knight over. Didn't really know what was going on but it was quite entertaining. Reverse DDT on the middle of the rings between the two, and I always like how seeing how these non-War Games matches use this stuff. Obviously, there's not too much they can do, but without making it kind of devalued, but still quite clever when a heel takes advantage of it. But eventually you do get the Kinshasa, and it felt like a big deal when he hit the 3 count, man. It really did feel like that. And again, for someone like myself who over the past 24 hours has kind of changed my mind on this, because the last week or so I've just been adamant that I didn't want Nakamura to win it because of how much I like Nakamura. Going into the match, I was like, no, man, you deserve some. I just give him these flowers here. If these are the flowers he gets, if he doesn't get the biggest bunch, as in the world title, then fair enough. Give him some flowers, and we got those flowers here. But what is next for LA Knight, man? They really played on this kind of not being focused thing, and I think that might be quite a clever way to do it for LA Knight, because he's been such a cocky, charismatic character, right? How do you kind of lose, right? Maybe suddenly forgetting who you are or something like that. It would be interesting to see kind of how they play into this. Just while we're at it, I might as well mention I have had the opportunity to interview LA Knight. So if you haven't seen that already, please check it out on this channel. Of course, he gets all the Rock and Austin comparisons, and he addresses those in my interview with him, and also talks about the reason behind the LA Knight name, and just how to become good at great promos. What is his history? What is his history? Excuse me, behind that kind of method and kind of creating this character. But yeah, like again, a really enjoyable match. I have to say, I'm again at this stage happy with the decision as far as who left with the title. So I'm hoping it means something good will happen with Nakamura with this title. It will continue to grow like the IC has in recent years, to be fair. And I'm interested to see what happens with LA Knight again, and I'd love to know what you guys think of it as well. He's going to win the Andre Giant Battle Royal. I mean, the Andre Giant Battle Royal gets thrown all over the place these days, right? Is it still on SmackDown, or WrestleMania SmackDown as they were calling it for a while? My goodness. And did he? No, he nearly won that. Everybody thought he should win that a few years ago, right? Oh, man, I'm losing track now. Let's move into the next segment. It wasn't a match at all. It was a fun ad for True Classic. No payment here, by the way, guys, but I've got to mention it because it was quite funny the way Otis was advertising that with his buddy. So, yeah, quite enjoyed that. Thought that was worth a mention. Also, with that in mind, I was just joking to Sludge. Yeah, I'm glad. Also, with that in mind, it does remind me that the mat had not just Prime, had a Diablo advertisement, Sonic 3 advertisement, and this t-shirt brand as well. So a lot of ads there. I did think, you know what, you got 2 rings. Could you not switch it up a little bit? But I guess the argument would always come in because there's always one ring that sees more action, right? If there's 5 matches. So, yeah, maybe unless you pay more for one, the one that gets 2 matches, I don't know. But either way, interesting to see that move from WWE. It's something that they've done in Japan for years, they've done in Mexico for years, and that WWE have just never really taken advantage of until the recent era. One complaint used to get about rings with print on is that they're slippery and therefore may be dangerous. So we haven't heard anything like that about WWE's rings so far, that canvas. So hopefully that's because they've figured out a new way to do it. But anyway, interesting development either way, I thought. Now let's move on to the IC title. Again, a big match, one I was so looking forward to, and my goodness, did it deliver. Certified banger with this one. The only problem with it was kind of obvious that the title wouldn't be changing hands, but we'll get to that. So some of the big moments in this match, you get Kaiser being stopping Breaker's run around the outside of the 2 rings this time. Of course, Breaker diving on top of both guys over the announce table. Sheamus doing his big old hits to Kaiser and to Braun. Loved that bit where he stood, I think it was behind Kaiser, just waiting for him like a horror movie, and just boom, got in with it there. And then you had the massive Frankensteiner, of course, from Braun Breaker. But then he thinks he's going to end the match, and instead he runs into a chair in the corner. They're very loose on the kind of triple threat, therefore means there's no DQ in this one. So either way, it made for a great match, but he runs straight into the chair with a spear. A bro kick looks like it could be ending the match for Sheamus, but no. Kaiser pulls the referee out, and I think this is something that's going to continue. As I mentioned with Andy earlier on our build-up show, it was something that was starting to become a bit clearer to me, really, thinking, you know what, I think this is for the long haul. And I think the result is exactly how we said it would be in the end, as far as if you want to do this, right? You keep it on Braun for a bit longer, that makes him look good. Then you give it to Kaiser, that makes him look good. And then you take it maybe even to WrestleMania, where Sheamus finally wins it. And man, that makes him look good. And that is the best of, I would say, both worlds, but all 3 worlds with this one. So I really hope that's what they're doing with this story. Really did enjoy it. Sludge says, banger match, but stupid ending. When WWE does triple threat matches for the title, they are so interested. I always think they will change hands, but when they retain, they get so mad. I went to WrestleMania 37 and I was, well, that's the thing. A triple threat always does give that kind of, element of, a shake-up, possibly. And that's what they kind of promise, right? 3-way matches, 4-way matches. They say, they don't have the championship advantage in this one. And then, when they do, you're like, oh, okay. Going back to some of the big moments in the match before we do get to the end there, Sludge. We had Kaiser using a shillelagh. Sheamus hits the kneecap on Kaiser. Kaiser gets close again, but Braun stops him with a crazy spear, diving over Sheamus to hit it, and then eventually hits a spear on Sheamus as well, and picks up the win. Now, again, if you go back to my predictions from earlier on this week, I was saying, look, I want Sheamus or Ludwig, because I want Sheamus for what it means for his career to win the IC. I want Ludwig because I think he's ready for it. But I wouldn't be too mad at Braun either, because taking it off of Braun would mean we're hot potato in the title, and I don't really want to be hot potato in the title at this moment in time. As I say, this gives the best of all 3 worlds, and we'll see where this goes. I think this has potential to be a storyline that lasts a long time, similar to that Sheamus and Gunther one, where Drew then got moved into the storyline as well, and they really managed to expand on that. I'm so looking forward to seeing more from these 3 guys together, and I'm so glad that Sheamus is back within a really fun kind of storyline as well, because I think he deserves it. Great performance from all 3 of these guys. Then we get to the main, not the main event, excuse me, before that, the World Heavyweight Championship. How does it say that's not the main event, right? A world title. Gunther defending against Damian the Priest. Now, this is a match that I was not looking forward to one bit, and I think I'm not the only one. And it's not because I don't like either guy, it's because there was no jeopardy in this match. There had to be something kind of big happening at the end, and I think there kind of was. A good match. I think it was in a difficult position, and I'll give them a lot of credit, because I think it's a position where it was obvious that they were in the position to kind of, the crowd was going to drop for a bit, but to their credit, they picked it up after a while, and the fans were very much behind it. And I think it was a great performance as ever from both of these guys. Now, they first started playing into this bad arm storyline with Priest, and I really enjoyed Corey Graves giving the kind of insight as a former wrestler of, like, you don't understand, like, you need both your arms to do the pin. It's just hooking the leg and trying to pin down the shoulder, hence the name pin, right? Then we saw a great Hurricane Rana towards the end from Priest off the top rope, hits the Razor's Edge, only gets the 2. He goes to the South of Heaven, but it gets blocked twice. And then you start getting Gunther again taking control because of the arm. Same reason he got out of the South of Heaven as well, hitting the Kimura, but you get a rope break eventually. Then on the outside, you get a strange spot where Balor falls, spoiler alert, where Priest falls to the outside, and Balor, and it looks like his arm separated or something like that. They didn't really show it. It was a few weird camera moves on this show, I got to be honest. They didn't really show it, and it was hard to tell what was going on, maybe on purpose, for this very reason. But anyway, Balor eventually comes out of nowhere, jumps on the steps, hit the coup de grace, and Damian is in no way to continue, essentially. Gets back into the ring. Not before, though, Gunther takes out Balor with a massive kick to the face, which is quite funny. And then eventually Damian would pass out, loses to submission to Gunther. Again, good match. Credit to them for how they kept the audience into it. As far as I could tell from the outside, it'd be interesting to know what people thought in the venue and what you guys thought of this match as well. But I thought they did a really good job considering the circumstances, considering that we all know this is a match that had taken place before and didn't feel like there was any jeopardy because we didn't think anyone was winning the title. There was a time in the match where I thought maybe it will happen, but a split second essentially. But I'm happy with this because I think the Finn Balor Damian Priest storyline never really went where it should have, right? It's the kind of storyline that deserves a big feud. Even WrestleMania, I think we're too far away from that now to stretch it out, but it's the kind of WrestleMania feud you'd get without a title where you're like, oh man, I can't see what these guys do. Can't wait to see what these guys do because there's such a story there. And I love, again, Balor, I love Priest, I love the whole Judgment Day story, and Priest felt like he was floundering the past kind of few weeks. So to bring him back to it, I know some people might have the argument of like, well, this is treading over old ground as well, but not really. I don't think they really got the full potential out of that original storyline, right? It was a big separation. It was a big breakup, and there was, seeds for this story for over a year. And yeah, they touched on it when he first left the group, but then it kind of sidetracked a little bit. So yeah, be interested to see where they go from this. But they made a point in commentary of being like, he did it on his own without his Judgment Day friends. So I don't know what that means for the storyline, but hey, I'm looking forward to seeing where they go. Once again, Gunther versus Damian Priest. Pretty impressed with how they managed to get the most out of a kind of difficult position they were putting on the card. Then we get to the main event. It is the OG Bloodline versus New Bloodline and friends. Of course, CM Punk stepping in to help the OGs. Bronson Reed stepping in to help the New Bloodline. Now, there was a lot going to this match as far as potential twists, turns, and returns, and we didn't really get any of them. I'm trying to remember who came up with that prediction. I think it might have been Lucas, maybe even Andy might have said even the same thing, but we got none of those twists and turns that we expected. A Sami Zayn turn, a CM Punk turn, which I felt was less likely after what we saw on SmackDown because they clearly weren't mates, so it wouldn't be that shocking. And Paul Heyman, right? Paul Heyman was very much kind of a beneficiary of what happened tonight. Let's get to the match itself. There was no Rock, there was no new member of either group. There was no Seth Rollins return. There was nothing like that. But anyway, let's get to the match itself. I thought it was a fun WarGames match. Again, we got at the very beginning with the entrances, Punk attacking the cage, which was great because Jacob Fatu, as you can imagine, like the werewolf he is, tries to fly out of it. That was quite fun. Now, interestingly, in this, Jey Uso came out last. And I think it's a big talking point, but they want it to be a big talking point, right? Because they touched on this when he came out separate from Roman at Crown Jewel and got, Roman's in the ring going, what is this? With all the, the yeeting essentially. And then we had the same thing here. And I think it was designed to be that way because, again, they made a point of, oh, look, they're all coming out separately. And what Sami had said a few weeks ago about they're all on the same kind of level now and stuff like that. And that seemed more apparent at the end of the night, I'll be honest, with the result and stuff. They did look unified in a level way. but yeah, Jey Uso came out last and just again looked like a star, and that was fantastic for him. They made a great point as well about the landscape changing in WWE so quickly. Michael Cole was talking about how 2 years ago Sami was trying to prove his worth and all that kind of stuff, and then Corey was saying, look, look how different last year was. CM Punk's come back since then. It was a great point, and again we touched on this a bit in the build-up show earlier on, but also in the weekend kickoff stream from last night as well. But it really, A, was a lot to live up to both those years. And B, really just highlights how much has changed again within the WWE and like what Sami's done since then. What Punk, Punk being back is insane in itself. All these new members to the new Bloodline. What else did we have? Just a lot going on. Roman Reigns and CM Punk dynamic as well. Yeah, it really did highlight just how many cool stories have been told and how fun WWE is at the moment. But anyway, getting back to the match itself, Bronson gets into the cage fighting off kind of a slew of chairs, basically. That was quite cool. Jimmy hits a corkscrew, and then the Usos start teaming up from the get-go, and that was fantastic to see them working together, wasn't it? But Jimmy's like corkscrew, and there was another move he did early on that was like I feel like he changed up his style. It was a bit more like Jeff Hardy, but it was, still pretty cool. Solo stops Tonga Loa from going in. He sends Jacob Fatu, and it kind of made sense, even if it was a little degrading to Tonga Loa. It was like, you're next. And then you get the same thing from the opposite side. Punk tries to go in, and Roman goes, nah. Sami, you go in. Which was interesting, right? And then the next time we get a scenario between the two in the OG cage, Roman tries to go himself, and Punk barges straight for him, runs straight to the ring, gets out of the toolbox, and goes mad with it. It sounded like there was a bloody microphone in that toolbox, how loud the tools were inside. They never opened, by the way, so that was quite I wouldn't mind betting there was a mic in there for that reason. Roman then does eventually get into the match, or does he? Because he gets locked out. Surprisingly, he climbs up. You don't expect to see that from someone like Roman Reigns, right? He climbs into it and eventually just dives his way in, takes out the Bloodline. Everybody's taken out from his team. He starts picking them all up, but he moves around Punk. He doesn't pick up CM Punk, and Punk has to pick himself up. A lot of tension between these two guys here. Then Heyman finally comes out, and at this stage, I was a bit confused as to why they showed them opening the cage. I thought someone's coming down. Something's happening here, so you don't go, oh, but the cage is shut. Because why would they not do that at the end of the match? But they did it, and spoiler alert, and it didn't really result in anything, weirdly enough. But yeah, that's how they kind of set up Paul Heyman coming out. Then Reigns accidentally spears Punk. Always awkward when you get two guys who clearly aren't getting along anyway, accidentally knocking each other out. And then talking about kind of unsure spots and stuff like that. And we got another one earlier on talking about the camera where Candice LeRae fell from the top. I think they were meant to do that shot to show her face. She fell from the top, hit her face on the turnbuckle, and they completely missed it from that camera angle, I felt. Here as well, it was a bit strange. It felt like it was legit because we knew Jacob Fatu had already had a leg injury, right? And he goes to do his corkscrew kind of drop, springboard even, and just starts selling the leg. And it was really weird because, it didn't lead to anything. So I don't really get, like, it was kudos, like great selling because it was believable. I don't get what it did for the match, other than make Jacob Fatu look kind of naive or like prone to mistakes. Again, similar thing they did to LA Knight, but the idea there was LA Knight was distracted by this new version of Nakamura. Here, what's the idea? That Jacob is not that good? I don't know what they were getting at there, why they would choose that spot. Maybe others have a different view on that. Maybe more unfolding that kind of a characteristic of Jacob. I don't know. Maybe because he's so kind of rabid and raw. I don't really know what they were going for there. But anyway, didn't know what was going on there. But then we get Bronson Reed going to the top rope, about to dive onto Roman Reigns. Now, this is different to how me and Lucas Fantasy booked it on last night's kickoff stream. We were saying, look, it would be cool with the Usos, right? And Lucas was actually saying on the table, I thought, nah, like dragging Jay, dragging Jimmy, and diving off the top, just like ironically their dad once did as well off of a cage to Val Venus. I thought that would have been a great spot. Now they went on a similar route, but the annoying thing is it's not as good as a kind of replayable thing because it wasn't successful, but it was a great spot within the match. So not great for Bronson going forward, I guess, but great for WarGames promo packages and the story that we saw because CM Punk saved Roman. By about that much. My goodness, was it close? I would not be surprised if there were some words backstage about that, whether in a light-hearted, jovial way or a kind of, maybe they don't get on in real life as, maybe there's some truth in that, and that's not going to help situations. But man, it was close. Which made the spot look great. Don't get me wrong. Bronson Reed lands straight into the table. But yeah, barely made it out in time there. But you could just say perfect timing, maybe. I don't know. Then Solo gets in control, hits the Samoan spike on Roman twice, and it looks like it's game over until you get the double super kick from the Usos to basically stop Solo from winning. Then the 1D is not long after that, the Blue Thunder Bomb. Jimmy hits the splash successfully through the table on Jacob Fatu, and we finally end with a full kind of payback segment, really, where everybody hits their finisher on Solo. Like the only one missing was Cody coming out with some revenge as well. Like everyone hit their finishers on Solo, and that was it. They won. The OG Bloodline won. It felt good. It was enjoyable. Like, because of last year, it did feel like something big would happen at the end. But as I said on the stream earlier on, I think it might have been a good idea to not have a surprise so that you don't, especially for newer wrestling fans, maybe that aren't familiar with Survivor Series and WarGames, and they just end up thinking, oh, every year, like, again, one of the most polarizing figures in the world of wrestling is going to just show up. You're not always going to get that. We said this a while ago, maybe a year or two ago about on this channel as well, but big surprise, like what is left? Because it's usually Rock and Punk, right? Austin, and we've kind of had all of them. And the ones that you think maybe would create that buzz, you don't want them to because of health reasons or whatever it may be, or, keeping their legacy intact. So anyway, either way, I do think the way it ended, it was pretty cool. There were still parts of me going, oh, why are they slowly getting out the ring? What's happening here? And then Punk goes up to Heyman, and you hear a little bit of the chatter there of like the whole, what we talked about from SmackDown of, look, there's a favor now mode and all this kind of stuff. Really interested to see where that's going to take us as far as this part of the story as well. Then eventually you get to the end, Punk goes to the back, and I thought, oh, this is a chance for someone to run out like and attack the Bloodline because Punk's now gone. And then Punk came back and thought, oh, what's he doing there? He'd just being told by people in the back, I reckon, to go out and pose, because they ended with a nice little pose on the stage, and that was it. That was the end of the show. And I've got to say, guys, again, I really enjoyed it. You don't always have to have the biggest moment possibly in modern wrestling history, right, to end the show, like as we saw at last Survivor Series. After, by the way, some great stuff from the Judgment Day in that match as well, and Randy Orton's return, which was just so feel good anyway and perfectly executed. Again, there's always going to be comparisons to last year when it is last year, but I think they did a great job this year. I think it was a really good show. I think everybody delivered on the card. While there are some sloppy moments and while there are some maybe decisions I'm unsure about, I do have faith in the current regime and how things are going and the performers, that there is potential here. Gone are the days where half of this stuff will amount to nothing. I feel confidently at the moment, at least, that this is going to, for the most part, lead to things that make sense and have the bigger picture. Again, talking about this match here, the IC title, I'm looking forward to seeing this hopefully spreading out further. I want to see so much more of that. It was an amazing match, potentially match it all night. But again, this told a great story as well. Nakamura really gave his character a new kind of sense of purpose, and it was great to see. The WarGames match had a feel-good feeling at the end. It was kind of similar, I guess, to the one where the Bloodline did win and they accepted Sami at that time. This difficult position these two guys were in, but good. And again, something interesting as far as Finn Balor. Again, some people might think, oh, it's the same old stuff. Not for me. I think that match, that story has a lot more to give, essentially. And the women's War Games, again, I think it delivered as well. So overall, like I say, good show, great weekend, guys. Thank you so much to everyone that's joined us on this instant reaction review. But of course, everybody that joined us originally on the kickoff show and the build-up. If you haven't already, go back and check those out, because of course we were previewing the shows, but we also went in depth on a lot of discussion around Netflix, Saturday night's main event, and just WWE kind of scene in general, Nakamura's career and stuff like that. So skim through that if you haven't already. But again, thank you to everyone that's joined us over this weekend. Really looking forward to coming back and hitting you with some more content in the near future. If you don't already, please follow us on social media, where you can find us at RN Pro Wrestling. We are the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel on Blue Sky, X, TikTok, and Instagram. Look for us on those channels and follow for bonus content. But we are the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel. I've been Scott, and I've really enjoyed chatting Survivor Series with you guys. Looking forward to being back for Saturday night's main event. Raw going to Netflix, the Royal Rumble. My goodness, we've got a busy few months ahead, and then what do you know, it'll be WrestleMania season in due course as well. But thank you so much for joining us, guys. Spread the word about what we're doing here if you do enjoy us. Again, we've got interviews with WWE talent on this channel, we've got watch alongs, we've got features, and we've got predictions and reviews as well. So thank you so much for joining us. Hope you find something in the archive to tide you over to the next live podcast, but I'll see you then.
Welcome to the Rebellious Noise Pro Wrestling channel. On this channel, we bring you some great content from inside and outside of the squared circle. We will go through and offer some in-depth analysis of the biggest events of the year, as well as bringing you exclusive interviews with some of the industry's biggest names. There will also be live show reviews, in-depth features, and podcasts. So make sure you give that subscribe button a slam so you don't miss any of the action.